What's up, beautiful people? It's your boy Judio and I'm back again with a new video. Today we're going to be checking out Jordan Peterson's advice for people with depression. Without wasting your time, let's get to it.
The first thing I would say is that if you're dealing with someone who's depressed and they're really depressed, you should try giving them antidepressants. Because if they die, you can't help them. Okay, so if you're suffering, you are obligated in a sense to hold on to whatever rope someone throws you. And one of the things I do with my clients all the time, especially if they're really in trouble, is to tell them, look, I don't know exactly what's going to help you, but don't arbitrarily throw out any possibilities because you might not have that luxury. Antidepressants help a lot of people, and there are technical reasons why that's the case. So that's a simple answer. It's not relevant to what I already described, except that if you're offered a gift by your society and it works, try it. I don't care what your presuppositions are.
At least give them a chance first.
Apart from that, lots of the time you see people who are suffering with depression, for example. There's a multitude of reasons, but I'll take one common reason. You could think about it as associated with the story of Peter Pan. Peter Pan is someone who won't grow up, right? Now the problem with Peter Pan is he gets to be king, but it's king of Neverland. Neverland doesn't exist. So being king of nothing isn't that helpful. Well, one of the things that you often see with people who suffer from depression, and I'm not making a blanket statement about the cause of depression because there's lots of them, is that people who don't have enough order in their life tend to get overwhelmed. So for example, if someone comes into me and to see me and they say they're depressed, I always ask them a very standard set of questions. Do you have a job? If you don't have a job, you're really in trouble in our society. First of all, your biological rhythms tend to go off the rails right away because there's no reason to go to bed at any particular time and there's no reason to get up. And for many people, if they don't get up at the same time...
This really makes sense. Order. I feel like Andrew Tate spoke on this, but in the Andrew Tate way, and he got fired for it. Like, he got a lot of shots for it. But I think this makes sense. So Andrew Tate, the way he put it is you have to do something. And then he said, don't just sit around and be a fat fuck, something like that. And then he said, stand up and go to the gym. I think he said he was basically making sense in the Andrew Tate way, you know. He was saying the same thing, but in a different way. So order is important. So if you have a reason to wake up, have a reason to come back home, have a reason to do something, then that could help. That's a good number one point.
They foul up the functioning of their circadian rhythms, and that's enough to make them depressed right off the bat, especially if they start napping during the afternoon. They also don't have a purpose. People aren't good without a purpose, and this isn't hypothesizing. We absolutely understand the circuitry that underlies positive emotion. We know how it works. Almost all the positive emotion that any of you are likely to experience in your life will not be a consequence of attaining things. It will be a consequence of seeing that things are working as you proceed towards a goal you value. That's completely different. And you need to know this because people are often stunned, for example. They finish their PhD thesis and their presupposition is that they're going to be elated for a month. And often instead they're actually depressed. And they think, what the hell, I've been working on this for 7 years and I handed it in and what do I do now? And that's what depresses them, right? It's the what do I do now? Well, they're fine if they enjoyed it pursuing the thing. As long as it was working out, they get a lot of enthusiasm and excitement out of that because that's how our nervous systems work. Most of your positive emotion is goal pursuit emotion. If you take drugs like...
Most of your positive emotions is goal pursuit. That's important. Let's take it back again.
If they enjoyed it pursuing the thing, as long as it was working out, they get a lot of enthusiasm and excitement out of that because that's how our nervous systems work. Most of your positive emotion is goal pursuit emotion. If you take drugs like...
Because usually we think our positive emotions come from reward, but he's saying it comes from goal pursuit emotions.
Cocaine or amphetamine, the reason they're enjoyable is because they turn on the systems that help you pursue goals. That's why people like them. So if you don't have a job, you got no structure, that's not good. Plus, you tend not to have a point. So you're overwhelmed by chaotic lack of structure and you don't have any positive emotion. Well, do you have any friends? So sometimes you see people who are depressed, they have no job, they have no friends, they have no intimate relationship, they have an additional health problem, and they have a drug and alcohol problem. My experience has been if you have 3 of those problems, it's almost impossible to help you. You're so deeply mired in chaos that you can't get out because you make progress on one front and one of your other problems pulls you down.
Yeah.
So one of the things I tell people who are depressed is like, don't sacrifice your stability. Get a job, even if it's not the job you exactly want. Get a damn job. You need a job.
A reason to wake up. Order.
Find some friends. Get out in the dating circuit. See if you can establish an intimate relationship. Put together some of the foundational items that are like pillars that your life rests on. Well, that's the practical thing to do. So that's one example with regards to
the practical thing. Okay. That actually makes a lot of sense. I really do. I love those points. You know, order first, structure in your life, and get friends.
Well, the thing is, you don't just launch it on them, you know. You got to negotiate with the person. And you also got to teach them to negotiate with themselves. And this is something that's very useful to know. You know, you can tyrannize yourself into doing things, but I wouldn't recommend it. What I would recommend instead is that you ask yourself what you're willing to do. It's a really effective technique. It's like a meditative technique. So, for example, you can get up in the morning and you can think, well, you know, I'd like to have a good day today, so I'd like to go to bed tonight without feeling guilty because I, you know, didn't do some things I said I was going to do, and I'd like to have kind of an interesting day. So you got to fulfill my responsibilities, and I want to, you know, enjoy the day. Then you can ask yourself, well, okay, what would I have to do in order for that to happen that I would do? And the probability, if you practice this for 3 or 4 days, is your brain will just tell you. It'll say, well, you know, there's that piece of homework that you haven't done for like 3 weeks. You should knock that sucker off because it would only take you 10 minutes and you've been avoiding it and torturing yourself to death for, you know, like 72 hours straight. And if you do that, here's a little interesting thing you can do. And, you know, maybe this is little obligations you should clean up. And so what you do in a situation like that is you teach the person to negotiate with themselves. Say, well, let's figure out what your aims are. You got to have some aims. Whatever they are. And they might say, well, I'm so depressed I don't have any aims. And then I say, well, pick the least objectionable of the aims and act it out for a while and see what happens. Because sometimes your emotional systems are so fouled up that you have to pretend, you have to act the thing out before you can start to believe it. I mean, people always assume they have to believe and then act, but sometimes that's true and lots of times it isn't. So the trick, if you're doing therapeutic work with somebody and you're helping them establish a structure, is to find out what they'll do. Now, if they want to get better, which is not a given, because there are often payoffs for not getting better. That's basically the payoffs of being a martyr, or maybe the payoffs of doing what your entirely pathological family members want you to do because they actually want you to fail. Assuming you want to get better, there's usually something you can figure out that would constitute a step towards some sort of concrete goal. And my presumption, it's a behavioral presumption fundamentally, is that small accruing gains that repeat are unbelievably powerful. So, you know, this is another thing to know about in your own life. It's something I learned in part from reading the writings.
Let me tell you something, maybe this might help somebody, but this thing really helps me when I was starting a YouTube channel. Someone said, I don't know where I read this thing from, I've forgotten, but the person said, take one thing, do it for 6 months and see how far you're going to go with it. And that was the main reason I started a YouTube channel, or not the main reason, but the mindset I had when I started a YouTube channel. I'm like, maybe for 6 months, I'm just gonna like keep posting videos and keep trying this thing. Let me see if it actually works. After 6 months, I hit 10,000 subscribers. I'm like, oh, maybe this actually works. You know, I was just putting in videos consistently, just like I had a target in my mind. I had a set goal in my mind. I was just putting out videos. And after 6 months, it worked. So the small, tiny goals, that one thing that is insignificant when you first do it, if you keep doing it, it's going to result into something big. It's like working out. You know, if you go work out, your body's not going to take form just at once. But if you keep doing it, it's like do that to your morning routine. Even if it's to lift one dumbbell with your right hand every day, maybe like 10 times, you lift it every day. Do it for 6 months, you're going to see just your right hand is going to be big enough. So yeah, it all adds up. It adds up eventually. Just pick one tiny thing and keep doing it.
Of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who's a great Russian philosopher and novelist. You know, he said, you can look at your life and you can see what isn't right about it. I mean, all you have to do is look. And then you can start to fix that. And the way you fix it is by noticing what you could, in fact, fix. You know, people are often trying to fix things they can't fix, which I would not recommend, because if you try to fix something you can't fix, you'll just ruin it. Like, you can find all sorts of undergraduates who are perfectly willing to restructure the international economic system, who cannot keep their room clean. And there's actually a gap there, you know, and it's surprising that people don't actually notice. So I would say, if you pay attention, you can see things that you could fix. They yell at you. They really do. We even know how that happens.
Clean your room first,
Let me
guys.
give you an example. Because rooms are full of stories. And the stories have effects on you. So here's a classic experiment. So you take two groups of undergraduates, you bring them into your lab, and you give one group a multiple choice test that has a bunch of words in it that are associated with being old. And you give the other group the same multiple choice test, except the words are associated with being young. This is independent of the content of the test. It's just descriptions.
This might sound a little bit crazy, but if you have the YouTube app on your phone, you could actually be using it to create a new...
And then you time the undergraduates as they walk back to the elevators. The ones who completed the multiple choice test that had more words associated with aging walk slower back to the elevators. And they don't know that. and they don't know they're doing it. And that study's been replicated in various forms many, many times. You're unbelievably sensitive to the story that your environment's telling you. Because your environment is not made out of objects. That's just wrong. Your environment is basically made out of something like tools and obstacles. You're a tool-using creature. You're a tool-perceiving creature.
Wow, this is just a different angle. Like, I never would have imagined this. Yeah, lots of people always say, I think it was a Navy official that made this, I think it was a speech. Then he said, no matter what you do, when you wake up in the morning, dress your bed. At least even if you have a bad day, when you come back, your bed is going to be dressed. You know, like, people have always said this thing, but I've never really understood it in this manner. It makes sense. It does make sense. I promise you it does.
The things like if I take you out of this room and I say, well, what was in the room? You're not going to say, you know, random patterns in the carpet, because they're real. They're just as good an object as anything else. You're going to say chairs because you can sit on them, and you're going to say handrails because you can hold them. You're going to say stairs because you can walk down them. That's what you see, and that's what you interact with. And if you pay attention to your environment, which is you, by the way, extended, all of your experience is you.
Yeah,
it will tell you all the time
extended.
what you should do. All you have to do is do it. But then you have to decide if you want to do it. One of the things I've noticed about people, because I've wondered, once I started studying these mythological stories, and I got this idea about the fact that life can be meaningful enough to justify its suffering, I thought, God, that's such a good idea. Because it's not...
Life can be meaningful enough to justify its suffering. JP, oh my God.
Idea about the fact that life can be meaningful enough to justify its suffering. I thought, God, that's such a good idea. Because it's not optimistic exactly. You know, some people will tell you, well, you can be happy. It's like, those people are idiots. I'm telling you, they're idiots. There's going to be things that come along that flatten you so hard you won't believe it. And you're not happy then. And so if life is to be happy, well, in those situations, what are you doing? Why even live? But that isn't life.
You know what is crazy? There's this book I've been refusing to read for a very long time. Then I went to a thrift store because I usually get my books from thrift stores. I'm sorry guys, but that's how I get books. But I went to a thrift store and I saw it. I thought maybe I should buy it and read it. And the book is titled The Subtle Act of Not Giving a Fuck. And that book said the exact same thing Jordan Peterson is saying right now. It just says it with a little bit more vulgar, but the book says it. You guys should go look up that book, The Subtle Act of Not Giving a Fuck. It's crazy, but he said the same thing. I forgot the name of the guy. I think Mark Manson is the name. I forgot the name of the author, but just Google it. It's a popular book.
Life isn't to be happy. If you're happy, you're bloody fortunate, and you should enjoy it. You should, because it's the grace of God, so to speak. With regards to meaning, I thought, well, people know when they're doing something meaningful. They can tell. So why the hell don't they do meaningful things all the time? It seems obvious. You could do it. I mean, it's hard.
Then do it.
You know, because other people want you to do other things, and it's a struggle, but everything's a struggle. And then I thought, well, oh, I get it. I see why. It took me about 10 years to figure this out. People have a choice. Choice number one, nothing you do means anything. Well, that's kind of a drag, right? It's meaninglessness of life and all that, existential angst. You know, that's kind of a pain. But the upside of nothing that you do is meaningful is you don't have to do anything. You've got no responsibility. Now, you have to suffer because things are meaningless, but that's a small price to pay for being able to be completely useless. The alternative...
The students are laughing, but this is actually real. Like, this is a real... I don't know, I just want to keep hearing this, guys.
Existential angst, you know, that's kind of a pain. But the upside of nothing that you do is meaningful is you don't have to do anything. you've got no responsibility. Now, you have to suffer because things are meaningless, but that's a small price to pay for being able to be completely useless. The alternative is everything you do matters. Really. If you make a mistake, it's a real mistake. If you betray someone, you tilt the world a little more sharply towards evil rather than good. It matters what you do. Well, if you buy that, then you can have a meaningful life. But there's no mucking around. It means responsibility. It means that the decisions you make are important. It means that when you do something wrong, it's wrong. Well, do you want that?
Yeah, that had a lot, so much, I want to say so fucking much. I just have to express it in that way because that's the way I feel like has emphasis. So fucking much. That had so much. It was full. It was packed. So just a brief summary of everything I heard or everything I can remember. He started by advising that you take, or if someone is depressed, give them antidepressants. That was the first thing. Then the second thing is having order and structure, which is if you have a job, if you don't have a job, go get a job or have a reason to wake up in the morning, have something you're doing. Then he said, make friends, have like a family figure, get in some kind of relationship. And then he mentioned something about goal setting, where it's like, take a little thing and try to do it repeatedly. That way you're going to develop yourself. Then he spoke about your environment, you being your environment, and it directly reflects you. That's where he spoke about your cleaning your room and stuff like that. And then the last points that he just spoke about, which was choosing between being completely useless or being responsible. So those are the only two options you have. You cannot be in between. So you have to not do anything and be completely useless, or you have to take full responsibility and everything you do matters. And that way you recognize that if you do evil, then the whole world is leaning towards evil. If you do good, the whole world is leaning towards good. So that's just a brief summary, and I had a good time watching that. That was so powerful. Thank you, Mr. Jordan B. Peterson. As always, I'll put the link to the channel in the description so you can go check it out. I had a good time watching that. Let me know your thoughts on that video. If you want us to check out some more, feel free to let me know in the comment section. It's the end of this one. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Have a wonderful day. Peace.